So, the first things on the agenda for tonight are, choosing a clerk to take notes. Who would like to be, who's gonna be here next month and would like to take notes?
I guess that's me.
It can be you.
Couldn't be Paul, between the two of you.
Yeah, well, Paul just tactically disappeared.
Okay. If you take notes, I'll make it up to you.
Okay, as long as I can get a copy of the recording, I
Yeah.
will be happy to do it.
Okay,
Yeah, recording it, I found essential.
and, so then. Next thing is, meeting minutes from, last month, which Janet took. And I read through them, I fixed a couple of typos in the version that I sent around, just a couple spelling things, but there wasn't much. Did anybody have any comments about the minutes?
I looked it over, I didn't have any comments.
I wasn't here, so.
Okay,
What were the mistakes, what were the errors you found? I didn't,
I think it would be good if we had if one wants to make a motion to approve.
I moved to approve the minutes as written.
Second,
Okay.
you've already made it correct.
What's it?
Spelling, I don't have to do anything more,
Right, you don't have to do anything
Okay,
more,
good.
if we don't have any other corrections. I
okay.
have the version.
Good.
All in favor of approving the minutes from April?
Aye.
That would be
Can I vote for my own minutes?
four of us. Paul, are you in favor of approving minutes for April?
I couldn't hear you. Say it again.
We're just approving April's meeting
Oh.
minutes.
I approve.
Okay,
And I
Okay,
think, I think I abstained since I'm not,
Okay.
haven't been there, but
5, 0, and 1. 5, 0, 1. And then the next thing is deciding on a meeting date for June. And June. So if we're still sticking with the fourth week of the month. Or the third week of the month, could be Monday, could be Wednesday, could be Tuesday. I'm gonna push for Wednesday just because my birthday's Tuesday, I'm hoping to be sailing on Monday. But, so that would make it, I would propose June 25th. If, anybody, Brad, are you able to make that one?
yeah,
No, okay. Yeah,
but that's also not the third week,
no, that's the fourth week, you're
that's the
right,
fourth week. Third week, on the 18th,
the 18th,
I would be fine with that.
you're okay with the 18th?
I'm fine with the 18th.
Okay, I should take a look. It looks good to me. 18th. So, let's go with 18th tentatively and, poll, other members as well. Okay, 6/18, Wednesday. Okay. Chair updates. Janet, do you have any updates?
I don't think I have anything in
Okay,
terms of chair related.
I have a few things. One is I'm writing a 2-page description of what it means, roles of being a chair. I'm not done with it yet, but mostly done. I need to finish it off. And the upshot is, so we're gonna vote shortly, nominations and vote for, new committee officers. And I hope that Catherine, comes, she's the one that we're missing, right? Yeah, and she's gonna stay on the committee. And then, so I'll get this done. I think the chair responsibility is like, in addition to coming to meetings, it's kind of 6 to 8 hours in a month. And that's, other meetings, preparing agenda, but it could be less than that. I'm just, outlining what I think roles are. So then the other announcements I had were, at the chair's breakfast, I heard a few things this morning. One is that there's a next community event for MCI Concord planning on next Wednesday, the 28th. They intend to present a couple of scenarios they're talking about for development of the site, as well as the selection criteria that they're going to use.
Selection of,
What to do, what sort of, I believe it is what sort of, how they'll decide between competing options.
That's a day
Okay.
meeting, that's a day
Okay.
meeting, isn't it?
What?
I think that's a day meeting, isn't it?
That's at 5 PM.
Oh, 5,
Am I
I
wrong?
think,
I think
they
when I
have
got
two.
a card in the mail, which I think it was, they were planning to hold it at, Tyrone.
Jerome Park?
And I think there was an afternoon session and an
Yeah.
evening session.
Right,
Oh, okay. Good, so I was unaware of the timing, I just know that it is on next Wednesday.
But it didn't really, Con didn't say much about
Yeah.
what the agenda would be.
Okay, then, the town meeting on June 2nd, which is the following Monday to Wednesday. Starting at 6:30, it's earlier than usual. And they have a couple high interest articles on Tuesday and Wednesday about, the stormwater utility creation and, the Newbury Court expansion. I don't remember the numbers of those articles, but they consider those high interest articles. So they schedule those,
Yeah,
Everything
there's
else.
times for those.
yeah. And there's gonna be clickers at the meeting. Hello.
Met Shelley at the Kaiser Road.
Okay.
And then I saw the email, sorry.
I did that before.
The last two announcements are, there's a middle school, has a ribbon cutting ceremony on Wednesday, the following Wednesday, June 11th. That's at 5 PM. And then we'll be able to go in and see the net zero ready school. And that'll be exciting. And then, I just wrote this down. One other thing I learned from the meeting is that the select board, formalizes their FY 26 goals that they try to set down in July, so the committee can, have some input. They request input from the committee on what the select board goals should be. So we can think about that next month, if we want. And propose some sustainability related goals. We can talk to Wendy about it.
Going back to the town meeting, were there any other articles you think that climate action we should actually support? I mean, we had ESCA's, that presentation,
Yep,
came to us. The new parking regulations, which may limit the necessary parking, and, could allow more green space. I went to the League of Women Voters presentation this morning. And one thing, that they pointed out was in the Concord Market development, because there was no shared parking. They're required to put in a lot more parking than's absolutely necessary. And they've got that elevated platform over wetland, which kind of destroyed the wetland, even though it officially didn't. That's always empty. I mean, I've never seen more than 2 cars there. And then also in the redevelopment, down by, where Elm Street comes into Route 2. And they had a plan of that, and they said, well, we wouldn't have had to put in so much parking, then there could be more green space by the river. So that seems to me something the Climate Action Committee could endorse. For the
It could, if we had decided to put it on the agenda to discuss it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I don't know if we can vote to endorse things without, I'm not sure if we can. But I didn't put it on the agenda.
Is it timely? We can't wait a month and put it on next month and then.
That'll be also town meeting.
Yeah, okay, I mean,
Yeah,
Town meeting's the 2nd.
yeah, so I don't think we can endorse any other articles besides what we talked about.
Just make your friends aware.
Eric, do you, have any updates for us besides?
Sure. Yeah, well, not surprisingly, given my pending departure, I've been working with Megan on transition, so trying to make sure that she's aware and of everything that's happening. I mean, it's we meet weekly anyway, so nothing's gonna be a surprise to her about what I've been working on. But just making sure that she's up to speed on things, making sure that all the files and resources and everything are there, for her, and making the connections between her and any other programs of the state and things like that that I typically have contact with. So we've just kind of been working on that. As far as particular projects go, we'll talk about the energy savings performance contract and update about that later in the agenda, so I won't get into that right this minute. The decarbonization roadmap effort continues. We're closing in on getting the building data to our vendor. I just got some additional data from facilities that I need to integrate into the worksheet. But I'm hoping to have that in good shape to be able to hand off and then not have much more left to do on that before we can get it to the vendor and have them start working on it. If you want to see an example of a roadmap that was done for another community, using the same process we're going through, Natick has done it. And so online, they have a document, I can send it to the group. But I just came across that recently, and that gives you a sense of sort of the scope and scale of what to expect from this roadmap through this process. So again, it's not particularly detailed compared to other things like the audits we intend to do. But it can give you a sense of that, of what's going on with that. So we're made progress on that, and like I said, getting close to, I think, turning that over to the vendor to allow them to start working on that, and then I think it takes them like maybe 2-3 months because they're working on a few different towns simultaneously, and so we'll get in the queue for that. The climate action plan update, I think I already sent this to all of you, but just wanted to remind you that there's a couple other towns that are also in process with or will be in process of updating their climate action plans. And I mentioned Brookline as an example. I think I shared their RFP that they had put out. They already have a vendor that they selected through an RFP process to help them update their climate action plan, which I think was also released in 2020, so they're in the same time frame as we are.
Yeah.
So they've already started that process. So I think what they have for RFP, I think is a good template that, you know, we can use, hopefully after July. If the money's in the budget, to hire a vendor, you know, that could be a good template, I think, to speed up that process of getting that out and lining up a vendor to work with the committee and Megan and others to keep going forward with that process. And then they also on the Brookline website, they have a web page dedicated to the process, so you can kind of go there and see how they're going about all this and see if any of that would be useful. I was kind of been looking at that previously as kind of a model that, you know, we could emulate in some ways for the process here. Leaf blower ban, I think everybody's aware that that is kicking in again on June 1st, the seasonal ban. I say seasonal ban, it's actually there's sort of the two seasonal windows where the ban isn't in effect, spring and fall. Technically the ban is in place for the rest of the year, although, you know, a chunk of that is fall, winter, where you're not hearing a lot of leaf blowers and seeing a lot of leaf blower use anyway. So June 1st to September 15th is, you know, the intense time where, you know, a lot of people are gonna be paying attention to it. So, I've been working to sort of communicate reminders about the ban. I've made some updates to the webpage, that we have on the town website about that. A while back, maybe a month or two ago, I reached out to the police department and just reminded them about the ban and that, you know, there's a chance they'll be getting calls about violations of the ban and need to respond to those. Just as a reminder, reach out to landscapers, the landscaping list that I have, that I got from the town of Lexington, which is a very broad spectrum of landscapers, many of whom may not work in Concord because it's sort of the greater Boston region, but it's the only resource I could find that has a lot of contacts in one place. So I think there's about 200 emails in that, that go along with a lot of landscapers. So just reminding them that that's out there. I have a request in to, our communications office. I just wanted to update, there's 2 PDFs that are on our webpage. And I just want to have those updated with, because it currently has my contact information, so I want to update that with Megan's for now. And then we'll be making a push, hopefully the next few days through the town communication channels to remind everybody as well that that's coming up. So again, really just focusing on communication and education, recognizing that enforcement is challenging and will continue to be challenging for that. I think Lexington and maybe Arlington are a little ahead of us on this, so I think they're actually getting to the point this year now where they're implementing their full bans. They've had these sort of seasonal ones leading up to that, so I think it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that too and see how that works for them. You know, looking down the road a few years from now when our full bans take effect. I just want to mention that for the new middle school, the RFP for solar. The solar project over there for the rooftop solar it's my understanding, according to the last light plant board meeting, which was last week. The light plant is still awaiting signature on the agreement that they've been waiting for a number of months, which the schools just need to sign off on to say it's okay to go ahead with the RFP and do that. So there's been, it was supposed to be addressed, I think, at the last school committee meeting prior to the light board meeting. For some reason there was some confusion, didn't get covered. So I think it was up for the next school board or the school board meeting. So they're this close. And then so basically the light plan has just been waiting for that to get signed off on so they can put the RFP on the street and move forward with the project. So hopefully that will be done at the next school committee meeting. I wanted to mention, well, before I get to that, as you all know, that an MVP proposal was submitted, and I just checked with them the other day just to see what the timing was on hearing back from that, and they had said that it would probably be midsummer before they would be notifying anyone. So I just wanted to let people know that it might not be till midsummer that we hear whether or not that proposal gets funded. And I did attend a meeting today. There was a workshop this morning that was sponsored by the Charles River Watershed Association, which also included the Mystic River Climate Collaborative and Watershed Association and the Ponce River, and then also talking about regional approach to flooding, involving municipalities, so I kind of went there as just sort of an informational thing to hear what was going on, and then I also, sort of made sure that there were a few people in the room that I had contacted as part of the process of submitting our proposal, so people from those different organizations to help inform the proposal that went in for us, so. I kind of reminded them that there was this proposal floating out there, and I think they'll all be good resources if the proposal does get funded, to sort of, you know, reach out to and learn about their process and how they did everything, and hopefully. There'll be great resources to move forward that effort if it does get funded. And then the last thing I was gonna mention is there is a funding opportunity that I've been exploring and making the schools aware about. So let me backtrack for a second. I think I've mentioned before that at 2020 town meeting, there was $200,000 that was approved through a citizen's petition from Brian Folds to support a vehicle to grid charging effort at our school bus depot with our electric school buses. That nothing was done with that money. So when I found out about that a little while ago, that it's still around, nothing's been done with it, it's still available. I went back and was talking to Brian, and they've been trying to see if we can move that forward to do something with that money, to improve the charging situation over there, and use it as a pilot to see how, you know, we can use our electric buses to feed our grid at times, you know, with the idea of down the road, if more electric buses are added and, you know, it becomes an economy of scale, but just testing it out as a pilot at this point. So Brian had been doing a little bit of research, and on his end, and in the meantime, this opportunity came up through the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. There's an opportunity called Vehicle to Everything. And it provides opportunities for residential, commercial, and school bus applications. And the idea is that through this effort, you can submit an application to be selected, where they will install chargers. They will give you chargers and install them for free. And you will be, in exchange, you'll be reporting data to them. And the idea is that these chargers are going to be feeding to the grid.
Yeah.
So whether it's residential, commercial, or school buses. So there is an opportunity. So I've done some research on that. I reached out to one of the school bus companies who's provided us with electric school buses, have reached out to us, had a conversation with them. They also had a conversation that I wasn't involved in because I couldn't make it, which included Bob Connery, the assistant superintendent at schools. So he was aware of that. And Brian and I continue to have a conversation around this with the hope of pursuing this. So Brian and I met 2 weeks ago with the light plant to talk about the electric service over there at the bus depot, what will be required to upgrade that service in order to have these rapid chargers, because right now the service can't accommodate those. And we want to get a sense of what that would involve if we want to go forward, because that's not covered under this opportunity. But we have this $200,000 that seems like we could be able to use it for that. So we're trying to, you know, leverage these two things. So we had the conversation with them. There's some questions around the timing. The funding opportunity, ideally they're looking for situations where that infrastructure is already in place, because they have sort of a rapid timeline for trying to do this. They do research and intend to install chargers, I think, by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, which is a fairly quick turnaround time. So that's why we wanted to talk to CMLP to see what that was. So we got some information from them. They seemed to think it was doable to upgrade that service. One question was about around needing a transformer and how long that might take. But I have sent all this information to the schools through Bob, let them know what the deadlines are, sent a copy of what the proposal is and what it involves, offered to help pull all that together. And I haven't gotten any response to that in terms of moving forward on it, because ultimately the schools need to be the ones to submit the proposal. They have to technically submit it and push the button. That's just the way that the opportunity is set up. So it's in their hands. I had let them know a couple times, and I haven't heard anything. The deadline is May 30th, so the end of next week. I met again with Brian yesterday, and I think he had said he was gonna try to reach out to Bob again and see if you know, you can still manage to pull this off. I think the good news is it's not a particularly heavy lift. You need some information about like the buses that we have and some other questions around the infrastructure and things like that. I think two things that may be a disadvantage for us in terms of getting funded for something like this would be, I think there's a focus on lower income environmental justice communities. And then there's preference for situations where the electric service is already in place and there doesn't need to be work done on that just for the timeline. So I mean, that's not exclusionary, but it's a preference. So regardless, I've been pushing it as what I think is something that we should definitely be pursuing, and get an application in and see what happens. Because otherwise there's no chance we would get it.
Just to clarify, so who at the school needs to submit the application you're talking about? It's the application, right? Or do they just need to sign off on it? And it's something.
No, they need to be the ones that submit it. So it has to be, and my understanding is it has to be received by, like, submitted and received by the schools, like, so the school districts.
So that would be Bob, that'd be basically the CFO.
Yeah, so that would be somebody there. So, and I know it's a, you know, busy time of year for them and they get hit with a lot of things.
Can we, I'm just noticing the sustainability meeting, and I usually Dr. Hunter and Bob are both there, is on Thursday.
Yeah.
Are you gonna be able to be there? I'm just wondering.
I'm planning to be.
I know Priscilla runs those meetings, but I'm just wondering if there's a way we can kind
Yeah.
of corner them in that.
So, you know, and I can ping on Bob again. I think it was last week that I sent the last reminder with all the information. So I can ping on him again. Again, you know, I'm sure he's got a million priorities, and this maybe not being a high one at the moment. You know, so, but I just kind of wanted to update you guys that, you know, that we've been looking at this, we've been trying to move forward on this, but it's not as simple as me submitting it and putting it in. It does involve, you know, some input, and I also want to check with him just to make sure that, you know, I don't know whether there would need to be any endorsement or approval beyond, you know, the school administration leaders, Bob and Lori, to move forward with this. I don't know if they would need to, you know, pass it by the school committee. I'm not sure if that would need to happen or
Right.
not, but that's.
Does the town manager or anyone else, it's just the schools at this point?
Yeah.
Does anyone else need permission or?
I think it would just be the schools if they were choosing to pursue it.
And it requires no CapEx, no other capital investment, as long as.
No, I mean, my understanding is that it would be, and, you know, one of the things that was communicated is that, you know, I think it looks like a situation where it would be, you know, something that the schools could benefit from for the electric buses and the charging. And, you know, if we got the grant, which covers the cost of the charger and the installation of the charger, and we already have this other money that we were looking to do this with any way that could support the infrastructure, I don't think there would be any cost.
And not only that, would there be savings potentially on their energy? I'm just wondering, I just know that
yeah.
for them, it's all about the money, right? And
Yeah.
so if it's
Yeah,
actually,
I'm not sure about that.
okay,
I mean, so my goal at this point, you know, it's not like it's a guaranteed thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an application and.
Right.
But, you know, I think, you know, from my standpoint, sustainability standpoint, you know, I don't want to see any reason why we shouldn't apply, but ultimately that's a decision for the schools, so.
I'm just trying to think of, is there's a way we can present this that makes it feel like not just another burdensome thing that's gonna cost them money and time, but actually, you know, be a real benefit, you know, not just to the community and just not just.
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
How much work do they have to do to complete the application of the grant? Imagine you've done a lot of work already.
Well, there's an application form from what I've seen of it, it's not particularly detailed, it seems to be fairly high level in terms of the questions it asks. There's some information it looks like about that needs to be provided, I think, about some of the current infrastructure that's there and then just so 2 of our 3 buses are capable of vehicle to grid charging. So there would just need to be some information about those 2 vehicles that we would provide, and some other information, but I don't. From what I saw of the proposal, it doesn't seem like it would be, like I said, a particularly heavy lift where, I mean, you're not writing narratives, you're not, you know, need to come up with a budget, you know, it's just sort of some
It's basic
information,
questions,
yeah, for them to
We should really
consider.
push this forward.
Yeah.
So, but again, I just wanted to mention that, you know, we, you know, and had the communication, and, you know, there's still some opportunity, I think, to get that in, by the end of next week, and then I don't know, at this moment, I don't know, you know, if the schools have that bandwidth, to do that or not, but, the communication was made, so.
Does anybody need to be prepared to roll that 200,000 into the next fiscal year? Or will we definitely be able to spend it this budget year?
My understanding is that it is, from our accounting department, is that it's there, it's available. I don't know, and I reached out to them about the availability, recognizing it's been a few years. I don't think there's any, my understanding is that there's not necessarily any limit on that where it expires, since it has been approved, but you know, that would involve, I think, a more detailed conversation with accounting. I just asked if it was still there and available, and I got a yes.
Right.
You know, with some information around it, just about accounts and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, that's all I had to share.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. And, I'm, you know, this is Eric's last meeting with us. He let us know that he's leaving next week. Want to congratulate you on the new job,
Thanks.
Yeah,
and I'm glad you're not going far.
yeah.
And,
Come back and visit.
hopefully we can collaborate on stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to, you know, I mean.
Will there be is there a going away party or any sort of a thing planned?
I'm not sure.
Should we bring a couple 6-packs over?
That always sounds good.
Yeah,
I mean, to his new office?
yeah.
No, you know, I've really enjoyed my time here, and like I said, working with everyone, it's been a great place, especially for sustainability. I have such great energy and resources. I've learned a lot here that, I know is gonna be valuable to me moving over to Sudbury. I think, they don't have quite as long of a history of having someone in that type of role, and, you know, so I think, hopefully they'll benefit, I hope from my experience. And yeah, I would certainly welcome any opportunities to look for, you know, collaborations on different projects.
So when do you start?
I start there June 2nd, so.
So
it's kind
you
of.
don't have the kid either?
No, just gonna kind of roll right over, so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I accidentally skipped over, on the previous thing was, the committee, recruiting new members, and we had some luck. So we're losing 3 members. 3 other people, it's their last meeting, it's Jerry, Cheryl and Janet. And, it's been, you know, it's great having you on the committee and working with you for years, and we don't want you to disappear entirely. Shelley, Carlin's gonna be joining, has been voted on for next month. The day after town meeting, you're officially on the committee. And there's 2 other members, 2 other people who, said they were interested. One of them's on the call, Ruth. I don't know, Ruth, we talked on the phone, she had submitted a green card. Do you wanna say hi and, introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Ruth Eckert. Nice to meet you all. I applied for volunteering in some sort of sustainability climate action committee a year ago and was very happy that Brett called me. I am a German trained physician scientist working in the biotech industry, currently as a chief medical officer for a smaller company that's working virtually. And we moved to Concord 8 years ago, having lived in New Jersey 16 years before that. my husband and I raised 4 children, but they're all grown. 3 of them live in Germany now, 1 in Bethesda at this point, and we live on Monument Street in a 1911 house and have plenty of experience with one of your initiatives, and that's stationary energy and energy conservation in an old house. So I could speak to that a lot and bring experience. Other than that, I'm a lay person with regards to energy conservation and all these things, but I'm a very engaged person because I put everything that I do and what I vote for, I look for what is this person thinking and doing about climate change before anything else, and that motivates me. My approach is as much as you can use a carrot approach rather than a stick approach to energy conservation. Sorry, let's do that. But I hope I bring a little bit of how should I say, at least enthusiasm to the committee. So thanks for inviting me.
Great. So after the meeting, you can let us know whether you're still interested.
So far, so good.
Good. And then the other person who said that he was interested, who's not on the call, is Bob Shatton, who was on the Climate Act, on the CSEC for a couple of years before he went away. And he's an energy consulting business, so very knowledgeable about projects, good to work with. So it looks like we could have a full committee, which is nice. So let's move on to the next item, which is the nominations and vote for the next Climate Action Committee Chair and Clerk. And we've allotted a whole 15 minutes for that, but we only have 2 minutes left of the 15. So, of the people here, I would nominate Brad if he was willing to, because that way we wouldn't have to change the name.
Seamless transition.
But
I think he has more qualities apart from his name.
Yeah, yes, I agree.
have you done some thinking since we talked, or you?
I was supposed to think,
Oh, that's not a good sign.
you told me I was doing it, and I said, okay.
Okay, good.
The best way is
Well,
voluntold.
if you're nominating, I was second.
You've been voluntold. I just learned that term last
Yeah,
night.
voluntold, yeah.
I don't think I did, I don't strong arm people.
Yeah.
Do we need a third, or can we vote, or?
Well, we can, is there anybody who wants to run against him? Do you wanna run against him?
No, I
Uh,
put my full faith and confidence in Brad. I think it's a great
No one
choice.
else is qualified with their names.
We could go ahead and vote. I think, you know, we all know Brad because he's been on the committee now over a year, or maybe it's just a year.
Almost a year.
Almost a year. And I pledge to support him through, you know, to be chair, but yeah. Did he get a second? Did you second?
I second.
Okay. This is our most important vote. All those in favor of selecting Brad Dye to be chair for the Climate Action Committee for next year, coming year. Raise your hand. And I see Paul has raised his hand online. So that would be unanimous.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Mandate.
I just had a ceremony of handing the crown over.
Let's not talk about crowns, please.
We should try to have a meeting if we can grab hour or half an hour of Eric's time next week. Just to talk about whatever things we want to make sure that we keep going. well. So maybe there's a time that you and Megan can, meet next week, find a time.
Sure, yeah, I'll look at our calendars.
Yeah. Now, the other position which we did not fill last year is clerk. And the clerk position is, I estimate it to be, someone can react to this. I think you can do the minutes of of the meeting in 2 to 3 hours using the AI summary. But is that way off?
Maybe less now with AI, actually,
Maybe less?
yeah.
So it is a burden, but it's a good burden, it's a good, it's a good role for a new committee member. As well as existing committee members. I guess I would punt this decision to, I would suggest punting the decision to next meeting.
I was thinking that since it takes about 6 to 8 hours a month to be chair. And it takes about 2 to 3 hours a month to be clerk. That you might like to step down your responsibility level to 2 to 3 hours per month and be clerk.
I'd consider doing that.
Then I'd like to nominate Brad Hubbard Nelson to be clerk in the upcoming year.
Might look at these.
Yeah, or if you went job share, I mean, I do think. It's a little chaotic to do this every meeting, so I don't endorse that, but I wonder if there's a 6 month.
I'm willing to do it for, I like that idea, the 6 months. Cause that means it's easier, and then if I miss a meeting, we get a replacement.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
I'll second the nomination.
okay. Do we, any discussion, anybody wanna run against me? All in favor? Okay, I'm gonna abstain. I don't think it'd be unanimous, cause I always get myself in trouble. Okay. Way to go. First decision made.
Nice job, Chip.
Okay, so we got through that, and I feel like that's a great accomplishment. So now we're at about, we're almost on schedule, and we're on the agenda is talking about the climate action and resilience plan review. We haven't really dug into different sections and reviewed them lately. I think we've been busy with a lot of stuff. But it's gonna pick up, and I actually think it's fine if we let the consultant do more of it. And us, assist as it is. I wanted to use the reviewing as a chance to get familiar with all the sections and stuff. But, well, based on what Eric just said earlier, I think next meeting we should try to review that RFP from Brookline. And mark it up and try to figure out, because it'd be nice if we have that kind of almost ready a month from now. And then wouldn't necessarily lose a lot of time on that.
So it just, in relation to that, if I remember correctly, I believe that Brookline had budgeted 100,000.
Okay,
Our request in the capital budget for ours was 75,000. So I'm just mentioning that in case, if you're looking at the RFP and what they're asking for, and that maybe just recognizing that we may have less funds than
Okay.
they did to put towards this, to put towards a consultant, so just keeping that in mind is thinking about what to include in there in terms of tasks and deliverables.
Okay,
Once the budget's approved at town meeting, how soon is that money available?
Well, maybe I shouldn't answer that. I wanna say immediately, but, I don't know. I see Megan on the call. I don't know if she wants to jump in and correct me here, but.
Yeah, I think, hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person this evening, but, yes, I think once the funds are appropriated at town meeting, we can move forward with a contract to procure a vendor.
okay. And, do you think it should be an RFP as opposed to an RFQ?
What did Brookline do? I haven't had a chance to look over theirs yet.
I believe it was an RFP.
Yeah.
And I think. I think an RFP might make sense if you have, if you know what your budget is, because then you're asking for
Okay.
proposals that would be based on that
Based on that budget,
budget.
okay.
With the ESCOs, we'll talk about, we decided to go with an RFQ because that gives us more flexibility. We're just looking at asking for qualifications and they're gonna come up with,
Right,
pricing and that kind of stuff. So, but in this case, I think it'd be more of, an RFP might be more appropriate, knowing that assuming that we have that fixed budget of 75.
okay. Yeah. Well, good, so that would be the first step to actually getting going with the review, which probably involves lots of meetings, some public, stakeholder, sessions in the fall. And I don't know how far whether we would get all the way through it in 6 months. It depends on who we choose, how much time they have, et cetera. So I had put down in that spreadsheet we had, where is that guy? It was like, oh yeah, the review outline. I don't know how many people have looked at this, but I tried to outline how the committee, let me make it a little bit bigger. Although this is not being shared with Zoom, is it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
I think you have the option. Do you have the option?
I can share it with Zoom here. And then that's gonna be this one here. Share this, right, so this spreadsheet, Google Sheet, is our the review outline for the plan. And I just felt like we need to be pretty organized. And so I tried to define some roles. One for committee members and other helpers on different sections. And one would be a kind of an overall project lead. Now I have draft an RFQ, but that means like RFP and working to select a consultant. There's introduction sections that would need to be updated. Then maybe as a primary contact for the committee to work with a consultant. And then coordinating with section leaders. The section leaders would be the people responsible for individual sections. And by leaders, it doesn't mean you do all the work. It means you try to coordinate all the work. And even if you leave the committee and you're not on it, you can you can be involved in a section. There's planning input sessions and communicating with, town management. And I made a wild guess of, a time commitment over a period of months that this person would work. It may or may not be accurate. And I also, said, so there's the individual sections, the 5 sections, each have a bunch of actions. But just in terms of putting names of people responsible on things, there should be somebody responsible for kind of leading the review on each action. Meeting with stakeholders, and at this point, this was earlier on when I thought we were gonna be doing a full review before we got a consultant started, so this kind of might change around quite a bit, but this could be a time commitment of, depending on the action, might be not very much, or could be a fair amount of time. I put down maybe 10 to 40 hours for an action. And then a section leader would be the one who, kind of made sure that the action leaders were, working, coordinated. And then, maybe reviewing or, drafting text for that section. It doesn't need to be a complete rewrite, it just needs to be appropriate for now. And this. Maybe this time commitment is not as much as that, but, so all these things do take time. But I think it'd be the major work for the committee, in the fall. Any reactions to this?
Depends a bit on how many actions need to be reviewed.
Well, I don't know how many actions there are total, but there's like,
think there's-
quite a number.
It's quite a number.
Yeah. It's quite a number.
Um,
25. In that order.
How many?
I counted them, it's probably 5 times 4, 20 to 25, something like that. It's quite a number of actions. It was
Yeah,
actually one of my questions that reading through that for the first time in full, I kind of plowed my way through, but I said, oh, okay, a lot to do. Coming from my job background is more or less is more better or is focus better, so to speak. But I'm really way too early into this to judge, but there is quite a number of actions.
Eric, what do you think that the consultant would be doing? What, what would be the expectation for the consultant?
so in fact. I probably assumed the consultant would be doing less and we'd be doing more, and that may not be realistic.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is there any examples of what I know you said Brookline has already done it.
Well, they're in the process
Oh,
of
they're in the process,
doing
okay.
it, so, and I had initially looked at their website where they have some information, there's a page, that they have about this in the process. I looked at that a little while ago, so I can't say I recall all the details, but it does involve, I think it involves them. Doing some of this, which is, if you're sort of interviewing stakeholders and determining progress, but then there's also a part of, the community engagement, stakeholder engagement, as in terms of, we're doing these as well. So I think there's some of what the committee has started doing, which is, kind of focus meetings with responsible stakeholders for these actions to say, assess what's been done or hasn't been done and why. But then these broader stakeholder meetings where, soliciting input, probably more forward looking. Say, once they have that information about what's been accomplished, what hasn't, you know, then again, reviewing that with a broader range of stakeholders to say, okay, so how does this inform us moving forward, and what's the future plan look like based on this?
And some
Do you
suggestions.
know,
Oh.
you know, when the Brookline or another place is gonna be completed? I mean, I think it'd be really nice for the committee to see what another town has done, and what the,
I can't recall exactly when Brookline is planning to have theirs done. I don't know if it's as soon as the end of this calendar year, well, I mean, or at least, you know, some of it done, like the meetings and public meetings. I can take a look at their website, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But like I said, you know, I can. You know, I can pass along some information, probably like a list of other communities that I know, are considering starting this, they're probably like us, where they're considering starting this process, or I don't know too many others that are currently in it. But I know there's a number that are planning on it, because a lot of communities have sort of similar timeframe when they first started plans and put it into place.
So you know
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
send
That's great, and do you know, I mean, I imagine there's probably a limited number of consultants out there that are sort of versed in this. And I know I've talked to somebody in Somerville, and I think a lot of municipalities have kind of did this around the same time, it was 2020 year. And a lot of them use the same consultant, which on the one hand is great, because then you can kind of look a little bit more cross-regionally and compare plans.
right,
And sort of feel like you're sort of comparing apples to apples. On the other hand, I wanna be sure through this RFP process that we're, you know, it's not a done deal, or it's not just like the one consultant that just does everything. Yeah, rubber stamp, yeah, exactly. So I just am curious, now that things have evolved over the last 5 years, there may be more folks.
yeah, I agree. I think there certainly are more, vendors
Out there,
out there than there were even 5 years ago.
yeah.
I don't remember what the name of the vendor was that Brookline selected, but, I do recall seeing their name and not being familiar with it, so.
Okay, Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think there's probably definitely more options now than there were,
Yeah.
you know, back in,
right.
I think it was even 2018, right, or 2018, that the process probably started here in maybe late 2018 and through 2019, the plan was released, I think, early 2020, so, you know, it was leading up to that, so
Right.
even more than 5 years ago.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, the consultant should know enough, that is you know, trained in the art of figuring out, you know, what actions to do, evaluating the greenhouse gas, implications, but it has to be a plan for, you know, it's appropriate for this town, that's, and the stakeholders here. So maybe this time commitment for an action leader of 10 to 40 hours we should set the expectation lower than that. Because really the consultant should do most of the work. And, an action leader could just make sure that, they connect with the right people, and that, they have all the resources they need.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
That needs to be done anyway,
Right.
you know, so the consultant's gonna come in, he needs to be shown, you know, what's where. And so the role of the leader could be beyond getting the consultant started, leading a review process of once drafts are prepared.
Yeah,
So that leaves the creative process part to the consultant completely.
yeah,
Maybe a way to, you know, mitigate the resource requirements on our side.
okay,
Yeah, so I just found the Brookline page, and it looks like they have 3 phases past the consultant selection, which they've already done. And it looks like those phases go through the end of this calendar year, 2025, so I think they're intending to have things wrapped up, but phase 1 is baseline and target setting. It looks like they're including a greenhouse gas inventory, which we've done. So that's not something we would have to include like in the RFP,
right,
unless we felt like there was some need to do one beyond what what we've already done recently. Phase 2 is engagement, so again, I think it's stakeholders in the community, and then phase 3 is strategy and plan. So they have this lined out, laid out on the website, so again, I think it's worth looking at.
Okay, DPW Works is the name of the consultant?
No, that's actually sustainability in Brookline falls under Public Works. It's
Oh, okay.
organizationally, so that's what that is, but the consultant they used is ESE.
Oh, okay.
Not sure who that is, but
Linda, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I'm a little confused with the discussion about the consultant and what you're going to ask them to do. There's two tasks, right? Like what we have done so far and what we should be doing going forward. Are you thinking that they should be encompassing all of that?
Well, I'm not sure I heard it entirely. I mean, starting with the plan that we have, the consultant, I don't know that we would restructure it. We'd probably still have the same sections, but the consultant should help us decide, are these the appropriate actions? Are there other actions? And help us think through what the steps are on those.
I think Linda's getting at though, I think we sort of started the process and installed out, we did the natural resources, is that what it is? Is sort of like kind of baselining where we are, where do we, what did we do over the last 5 years? Is that something we're gonna continue as a committee and then give that feedback and data to consultants so that they can be forward looking, or are they gonna be sort of backward looking and forward looking, all encompassing of?
Thank you for translating, Catherine.
Yeah. Well, if we can do more of the backwards looking, I think that will be helpful in keeping the price within the budget.
I do think there's a level of, it requires a lot of time, so we have to think hard about the committee and that spreadsheet you were talking about the time. I think that there's a lot of sort of knowing, to your point, knowing who the people are to talk to. And there's a lot of time just kind of making those introductions and doing that, and knowing, where that information is. And to some degree, I would hope this committee is kind of a think tank for that. So I wouldn't want to be completely removed from that. I think it's helpful to have a professional to guide us through that process. But I do think that we need to be involved in that, and then, also could keep the cost down, but I also think cost aside, it wouldn't make sense for us, I think, to just hand over that work completely. And that's just from my perspective.
Agreed.
During the course of this conversation, I've been scanning the Brookline's RFP. And just kind of looking at it at a very quick and high level, I'm not seeing in the scope of work any discussion of the value of the vendor evaluating what happened under the 2018 plan in Brookline. So if we want to include that as part of the scope of work in our town's RFP, I think we will need to be very clear about that in our document.
Yeah.
It could be buried somewhere that I'm not seeing, not able to read closely during a conversation in this room. But it's not front and center in their document. Theirs is a forward-looking document and not a backward-looking one. So I take it for granted that if you're going to be talking about fulfilling the town's goals and moving us forward for 5 years, that we have to know what we've done in the last 5 years.
Right.
But that's not the structure of Brookline's document. We would be substantively different if we are going to ask the consultant to be looking backward. That's my quick read of Brookline's thing, not being able to read all 34 pages in depth right now.
Yeah.
Is it not the case that it's not a question of being different from Brookline, but being sort of a superset of Brookline? Because they're all forward focused. We would be adding the backwards focused portion to it.
Well, they have an incumbent climate action and resilience plan that they're operating under right now, and they're doing a second one. So their RFP isn't looking back at that and asking the consultant to look back at that. So yeah, we would be looking for more, for shorter money.
Right, that's kind of where I was headed. How do we fund all this?
So one thing I do see in here in the RFP is, under the anticipated scope of work, is that gather and review existing climate data, town plans, and conduct baseline assessment of existing town climate mitigation and adaptation actions and goals.
Yeah,
I
So
see
I don't know
that
if that's
too, but I
backwards.
don't necessarily read into that. When I read those words, I don't hear look at the current plan and evaluate what we have done and what we haven't done. What I hear out of that is look at what our current goals are. Any forward-looking goals
Yeah.
that Brookline Town Meeting may have set, or that the town hall may have set. I don't necessarily hear evaluate the incumbent plan out of that paragraph. And that's not the top paragraph in that section, that's buried, so
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that, I think our.
So, yeah, I mean, I think, there may be other communities who have developed or are developing RFPs as well, so, again, I can see if any of those are available, and I'm not necessarily advocating that. This RFP is the one we should be subscribing to, I was just throwing it out as an example of a town that's in the process of this, and maybe there's something to learn from it, or borrow from it to streamline things, so.
I think I agree with you. We don't want to be separated from this. If anything, we want to be more into the evaluation of what we've already done, and what we've done well and where we've fallen short over 5 years, so that we can be more realistic on the next 5 years, with some lessons learned and stuff that.
Plus, it's easier to follow if you've already got the baseline, even as you get new members in the committee, they would know what to follow at a shorter period of time, hopefully, on
yeah,
an ongoing basis.
okay. Yeah, I don't know how to resolve it, but, I guess we should look at, get the list of communities that are doing this, maybe get a couple of their RFPs and look at the Brookline one, decide what's appropriate for us. Talk about that next month. Is there anything more relating to the climate action plan review? Has anybody been looking at any
Well, I
sections?
think one thing, and I know Linda's on the call, but we just sort of, it was gonna be on I think it was on an agenda maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago to do the transportation piece, and
Right,
then we sort of put it on hold, and we may wanna do this
Yeah.
current conversation, but, and I don't know how much time we have, but given that she's on, and also Mark, I think, is here, I wasn't sure if there'd been actually an update. I know there's been several
Okay.
meetings, I just don't, I missed last month's meeting, I just don't know if we ever brought it back to this committee as an update, and I'm not sure how much there is to share, but I just wanted to make sure that didn't get lost if there was actually some.
yes, there was some work and,
Yeah,
um,
and I don't think Rebecca's on, but I know she was part of that conversation from TAC. There was a conversation between TAC and
I think that may be her phone number, that anonymous caller.
okay.
Yes,
Mark,
yes,
you
I'm
let-
here. This is Rebecca. I'm the phone.
Great. Excellent. So yeah, I mean, if that's okay, I think it would be, since we've sort of been tabling it for the last few meetings, if we could, if that's okay, Brad, we could take
Yeah.
a few minutes now, and I don't know who wants to kick it off or report back, but we've got Rebecca, Linda, and Mark, and you were
Great.
part of those meetings as well.
Anybody would like to start?
And I should say also,
Hi,
Lindsay,
this is
oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
go ahead,
This
Rebecca.
is Rebecca, and, yep, thank you. I'll just say that, when we talked about it in TAC, it was really to share what TAC was planning, and that there would be an opportunity potentially for TAC members or other members of the public to plug in to CAC's approach. So there really hasn't been any update on that since that discussion, because we've been waiting for CAC to start and implement the plan of recruiting people or deciding what you want your approach to be going forward. So actually my update is pretty short on that. So for example, I'll just add, when we, I think there was a side conversation about the mobility for, I can't remember, 4 main pillars, and the idea that you might want action leaders for each pillar, who then helps oversee the volunteers who are participating for those particular questions to assess what progress has been made. But in the context of the conversation that's happened tonight about the consultant, it's not clear to me whether that's something that's moving forward now, or that's something that's also on hold until you review the other RFPs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's something we need to sort of vote on, or we just talk about it at the next meeting once we have more information about the RFPs, but I hate for this to sort of stall out when you
Right.
know, we've got like a nice structure of leaders and actions, and, you know, we could slot ourselves into that,
right,
to Brad's point too, like, maybe it's less than you have up there in terms of the hour commitment because of the consultant, but I do think that work makes sense, because even if we're just liaison,
right,
liaison to the consultant, we still need to sort of think about and maybe take ownership over the different parts of the plan, to create those connections.
right,
And to Rebecca's point, like whoever's heading up as the leader of mobility could then liaise with the Transportation Advisory Committee as well as liaison on that.
okay,
Brandon, can
yes,
I throw in a comment? So just, I mean, it applies to a lot of different things, but when I look at the you know, I forget what it's called, but you know, the not the long plan, but the dashboard and the different things underneath of it. One of the things I noticed in there is that for all the items, there's like a collection of different groups. Some are town staff, some are kind of volunteer organizations, some are state agencies, universities, etc. It might be something, make a couple suggestions to throw out. One of them is for each of those categories or larger sections, it'd be good to try to query some of those major groups and see if they want to suggest a change. And then for each of those categories where there's like 3 to 5 or 6 or 7 groups listed, see if there's one particular group that wants to kind of be the priority implementer, because the CAC is not doing all the implementation. You're kind of
right,
gathering this massive plan and pulling it together. So I mean, in terms of something that's not transportation, but in terms of natural resources, one of the things that I've recommended to the select board and the MRC, whatever, is to kind of place some priority on the town learning more about how to use natural systems for climate resilience, not work against, have built infrastructure, work against the way that the land evolved, its water systems over thousands and thousands of years, protecting ecosystems and things like that. So I guess to kind of pin things down, I would suggest that in those sections, see if you can reach out to different groups and see if there's somebody who really wants to grab hold of the category on staff or committees or whatever, And if not, maybe they need to be, categories need to be modified to the point where somebody will grab a hold of it.
Right.
Separately is in terms of managing consultant, might be good for you guys and helpful for creating an RFP, if you figure out what are the inputs to the consultant
Yeah,
and what are the outputs you want. And then, you know, kind of figure out, you know, they'll respond to that with the bidding and you'll look at it and say, okay, I think these people are competent or not. But like the inputs in terms of what data already exists and where you get it.
okay, so that should be outlined in the RFP,
Yeah, I'm just throwing out,
yeah,
you
a way
know,
to
some of
do
the
that.
procedural.
I think that's a really important, I mean, both of those are really important points. The first one, in terms of accountability, you know, there's. You know, I'm not against having a consultant, but when you have someone kind of parachute in, do all this work and then leave. You know, it's up to us to implement it and take accountability for it. And so you need to have that buy-in from the people that are actually doing the work. And we're actually coordinating and pushing it forward, but we're not the ones on the ground necessarily, you
Right.
know. Paving the streets or managing the forests, so. I think that's an incredibly important point, and if we can somehow. You know, within the RFP or the process, make sure we're really understanding and naming. Who's sort of taking that ownership, in the very limited, natural resources work we did, I could tell a variability. In the various stakeholders we talked to.
Yeah,
In terms of just even awareness about the plan. You know,
Right.
some people really knew about it and bought into it, some people weren't even, you know, maybe they were newer to the role, you know, so. But didn't really even know of its existence, or if they did, that they were sort of in it, you know, or part of it, or needed to be checking in with it in terms of their work. And so that was a really educational piece, so not just for us to be educated, but also for the partners we work with, but I think there's sort of that next question about accountability in terms of. Implementing it moving forward over 5 years, that's really important for it to be successful, so.
Well, and I want, oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think that's what Eric with his roundtable was trying to get at.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, you know, it'd be great if that could continue on some level, but that's exactly what you were trying to,
Yeah, that was.
it's a quiet way.
That
quiet.
was one of the intents, has been one of the intents of the roundtables, and the first two of those have, as you know, have been a little bit more, information forward presentation, but, you know, the intent is to get to a place, where it is more of a roundtable, and you have those key stakeholders and implementers who are periodically coming together and reporting out.
Mhm.
You know, and sharing what's happening around what's in the climate action plan, so yeah, I thank you for saying, I was gonna mention that as well, because that's what popped into my head. And maybe it was also just thinking about the roundtable, I mean, technically the next one would be June, the end of June. Originally we said we would do them every 6 months.
That was you.
That was the intent, and that's what we started with. I mean, of course, that can always change if there's a need, but we just thought, everybody has so many meetings and things like that. You know, if it was twice a year, that, you know, every 6 months, that you would bring those key stakeholders together. So maybe the next one, if it is in that time frame, or if it winds up being a little bit later than June, you know, could have this as a focus, the climate action plan revision, in terms of
Right.
that being the context with which we're trying to get people together, and then it becomes more of a
A
round
shared,
table
right, and a
than
shared
just
vision, yeah.
somebody standing up front and talking more, reporting out more.
So do you think it makes sense to have that, a roundtable or discussion with stakeholders as a review of the RFP that we're planning to go out, so that, like, present our plan of what we're asking the consultant to do? And, or, cause that would be an extra step.
That would be an extra step, and it might be a burdensome extra step, possibly.
I just think if we're asking for us to do the look back, that's what we would ask at the next roundtable with enough heads up to say, we are looking at these things, can you please help us in preparation? We are, give us some information, right, that we would then ownership for flat.
Yeah, I mean, I think whether it's the roundtable or not, I think there needs to be some. from the committee to, to be reaching out to these other key stakeholders to make sure that they're, aware of this process, that it's happening, that they're a stakeholder, that they're invited to participate in that process and expected to participate in that process as a stakeholder, moving forward with the vendor, and just more, not as necessarily strictly an obligation, but as an opportunity, knowing that, they are, different departments here are responsible at some level for helping implement the climate action plan, so.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether it's the roundtable or not, I think it would be good to try to, have some,
Okay,
concentrated communication around that, just making sure that everybody's on the same page, that this process is gonna be unfolding.
okay,
Yeah.
good. Now, Linda, did you have a question? Comment? I had a hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I think Catherine's point is really well taken, that we really need to have a lead on this to make sure, and like you were saying, Brad, you don't have to do all the work, but you have to just gather everyone in to get the information. And Mark, I understand that I don't quite understand why TAC isn't really participating more in this, given that you don't have to do the work, but TAC knows who all the point people are, like what groups are the most important groups to contact to find out the more granular information. Yeah, so that's why I put my hand down, because I wasn't really sure like who's going to take lead on this. And you can break it up according to the pillars, but if we're just talking about the mobility pillar, it just made a lot of sense to me.
Right, so. Yeah.
It's a complicated process.
It's complicated.
I think
There's a lot of players.
we need to have some people, put people's names next to things and, as they're willing to take the lead on actions and sections, and somehow it gotta come together. We'll need help. And part of this is the fact that Eric's leaving.
Yeah.
Because he would really be running this process. He'll run it somewhere else. That's why it need to be organized as volunteers to do this, it's not simple.
And however it fits in, I think you'll probably want to consider having, some sort of steering committee around this that involves some of those key
Yeah,
stakeholders at some point in the process.
okay. I think we move forward. So next thing on the agenda, we're a little bit behind, is the municipal ESCO RFQ review. And there was, I thought it was a pretty good session last night. I learned a lot. Jerry was there and Janet was there,
I was there for a little bit, yeah,
and you were there as well.
yeah, I snuck in and then had to sneak out.
Okay. What did we learn? We learned about, the importance that this is gonna save money and magically pay for itself. Okay. Jerry, are you happy with what they've done, following your,
Yeah. Mostly. Folks here may remember the last meeting or meeting before, I raised the issue of, the RFP being completely energy focused without any acknowledgement whatsoever on emissions. I'm pleased to say that the town, Eric and Megan, and town council listened, and they produced a draft that in many different places, it lists energy and emissions. Now, which I thought was great. I'm very happy to see that. One thing I learned was that the state needs to review this RFP before we get to use it. And they may have issues with the fact that we're asking for something that may not have been asked for before. So That's a little disconcerting to me. On the other hand, I'm hoping that, the folks at DOER understand the, importance of focusing on emissions. Not necessarily to the exclusion of energy, but primarily focused on emissions. And, so that was one important thing I learned.
So you said the state needs to review the
DOER.
DOER.
Did I hear that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So once we have, our final draft of the RFQ, the first step is that it needs to be submitted to, we need to notify DOER of our intent to post an RFQ, and they have a window of, I think, 2 or 3 weeks where they review it, look it over, and make sure that, they're comfortable with it.
Okay.
And then, once we get their approval, then that gives us the green light to go ahead and post that and move forward with the process, but they do need to do a review first, so. So I think Jerry's right, I think what we've included in there is a little different than, the model contract that DOER provides and some of the, or model RFQ, I'm sorry, that DOER provides and some of the other ones I've seen. Traditionally, this type of contract just focuses on energy savings. And there really is no mention of emissions. And so, I think we're walking a line right now with what we put in where, we're certainly not, wouldn't be asking, respondents to that to be guaranteeing any certain level of emissions or anything like that. I think it's more of just, I think a recognition that, as part of this process, along with energy savings, is that emissions reduction is, a priority for us as a community. And so, that's something we're thinking of. And so I guess in the RFQ, we're also just sort of notifying any response that is something that we're thinking of. And, I don't know how they'll respond to it, assuming that it stays that way and passes DOER. I also think DOER is there's some shifting focus over the years, when this, so for example, when the Green Communities Program was created, the real focus was on energy savings, and energy efficiency, and getting communities to municipalities to focus on energy efficiency and make improvements. That program is now shifting to the climate leaders, the new climate leaders thing, to focus more on emissions. Recognizing that a lot of communities have already focused on efficiency, but also recognizing that, the idea of an energy savings performance contract, I mean, it's in the name, energy savings, that's what it's designed to focus on, that's what it's designed to do. And so, I don't know what it means to even just include the emissions language, and I'm assuming that the first step would be the DOER to tell us what they think, and they may say, nope, not gonna work, can't do that in this context, or maybe they scratch their head and say, well, this is interesting. And I don't know, one of the things that, Megan and I were talking about was possibly just reaching out to DOER. We haven't talked to council about this yet, just to sort of, even before we officially submit it to them, to sort of get their take on what they think, just so that we're not wasting people's time, but then, we're trying to be efficient with time here and see. So I think, we need to talk to council and see if that's, we get their take on that. But that might be something we can do to just, help narrow the guardrails on
I
this.
think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Is it division within DOER, or is it,
Yeah, it's the same people, so it's, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure they have their council look over any RFQs to make sure we're in line with, legal and in the spirit of it all and everything.
How many towns are doing an energy savings performance?
I don't have a number, I know there's, I know there's a lot that have done it, I mean, it's been around a long time. So there are any number of towns who are doing this, have done this, so it's not unusual. And there's a whole industry around it, so, so it's not unusual. I think that it really comes to, each individual community in terms of sort of energy savings, and does the model make sense in your community with your conditions, and that's what we're trying to find out by doing the RFQ and seeing what we get.
Do you believe that this concern rises to the level where you may want to package this RFQ along with letters of support from state policymakers who happen to represent our town? Because sometimes the best way through the red tape is to get out in front.
That's a good question. That's an
We've
interesting
got
thought.
Barrett and Cataldo, we've got people who
Yeah.
would support it, I think.
So
And
one,
Gentile.
And
yeah.
Gentile.
Three.
Yeah,
so I'm not disagreeing with that as, you know, a good idea. I think one consideration on this end is that this is something that the town's been trying to move forward on with getting investment grade audits done on our buildings for a while now. You know, I think we all thought this process was gonna move along faster than it has, so I think there's a timing component where, you know, we wanna get this RFQ out, we wanna see what we get, we wanna get this done. And so I think there's just that as a consideration of you know, adding other elements that might add months or more to, I don't know what it would take to do something like that. But, you know, I think before we got to that point, maybe that first step could be having a discussion with TOER and just seeing what their reaction is, you know, and based on the reaction, you know, is there something else we need to consider doing? So, but I mean, I certainly don't disagree with that as a strategy overall for, you know, looking at this type of model and contract and what does it mean, you know, moving forward. You know, not just for us, but maybe for others, when we're thinking about emissions. But yes, you know, as Brad mentioned, there was a meeting last night. We had, obviously there were some people from here, but we also, the town manager was there. Megan was there, our chief financial officer was there. Our facilities manager was there. We had representation from the select board when he was there. Finance committee, we had someone from there. We also had a member of the light board who was there. And then we had town council. So we had, you know, a number of stakeholders in the room who were all sort of hearing the same thing at the same time in terms of where we are. You know, good questions that were asked. And so I think it was productive. I just want to mention a couple of things that Meg and I have talked about that, you know, we still need to do as we're moving forward on this. We still need to confirm a few things with the schools. You know, the good news is that the schools have expressed a strong interest in participating in this. You know, which is great because this really wouldn't work without school buildings into this as a model. But you know, we needed to just confirm a few things with them, like the inclusion of the high school, the assumptions that they want the high school included in this, but because it's a regional high school, it's a separate legal entity, and so we just need to think about how that fits into the contract and whether the school committee needs to, you know, give any official approval to that. We're trying to get those answers from the school leadership right now. And then, you know, just a couple other questions about things related to the audits. And then as was discussed last night, we still need to add some our specific town building list to the RFQ and some info around the building. So, you know, finishing some conversations internally with facilities about and the schools about what specific buildings we're including in the RFQ. Again, that the idea is that we want to be comprehensive in what we include, knowing that we can claw some things back, but we can't add things once the RFQ is posted. And then, as I already mentioned, just, you know, checking with DOER maybe on this and just kind of getting some initial feedback from them about, you know, where we are with it. So those are a few things. The other things that we talked about related to the committee is, you know, it'd be good to identify a point person on the committee. You know, I think for this effort, you know, I mean, Jerry's been involved, but I know he's rotating off. And not to say that he can't still be aware and involved and all that, but, you know, it might be worth just, you know, having a specific committee member as a point person. And then ultimately, what we're hoping from the meeting last night and the meeting now is, to, you know, sort of get, I guess, an endorsement from the committee, you know, for us to continue to move forward with this, and hopefully you're fairly comfortable with the RFQ as it is.
I do have two more things to mention regarding RFQ. One I mentioned last night, which was, I didn't see anywhere in the document description of expected deliverables. And what I would like to see is for each, building, that we be presented with a range of options. 2 or 3 or 4, at least in every case, so that we can make trade-offs, we, the town, can make trade-offs about where we spend our money. Because different options yield different results, both in terms of cost and as well as reductions. So from a managerial perspective, that is our ability to manage these projects, I think we need to be presented with a range of options.
Now, when you, how deeply do those options have to have been presented? Is it something you could quote on them, or?
That's a great question. We probably would need to define that. But I use as this is not an original idea with me. This is what the school received in return from their consultant who was hired to investigate options for the Alcott boiler.
Right.
And if you look at the options, I listed 4. It's very interesting. The one that gives you the greatest reduction in emissions is $4 million.
Right.
But the next one that gets you almost as much reduction, not quite, almost, is $600,000.
Right.
So, there's some
Easy decision.
serious considerations that need to be paid to the different options. So if the ESCO is gonna provide us with, well, here's our recommendation for reducing energy in this building, and they give us one option, take it or leave it, we're in a tough spot.
Right, because we can, well,
And
okay,
and the other part, going back to my emissions thing, is if the state pushes back, if DOER pushes back on the term energy and emissions, just change the damn thing to emissions. Emission services contract. That should resolve that issue right there.
right, the problem is the economics of the business model of the contract, because they're trying to make money. It's really a energy cost performance contract, and they wanna do things to lower the energy cost. But the lowering emissions doesn't always lower cost.
No, but that's a challenge we face as a town.
Yeah,
And so, I contend that for us to be in the best position to meet that challenge, we need to have data, not
Yeah.
energy data, but emissions data,
right,
and we need options. So I don't think any of that will be new to the ESCOs, except possibly the focus on emissions as opposed to energy.
right.
For them to do proposals and to make money off of it, they have to have high confidence estimates of what things are gonna cost and how much energy reduction they'll get.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that was occurring to me is if you could put the social cost of carbon in, it's a kind of an abstract number, but at least then, when you're weighing the economics, you're kind of tilting it towards lowering emission compared to not. It's not that that's real money that's sitting in a bucket that you can.
Yeah, yeah, those arguments get a little difficult,
Yeah,
because some of the money is real money, some of it is not real money.
well, it's not real money that we ever see. Real
Yeah.
money to somebody somewhere,
Yeah, somebody somewhere else, it costs them.
Yeah,
At any rate, I didn't want to take over the meeting for this, but, I guess to you, Eric, and to Megan, just, 2 things. Focus on emissions. And number 2, options. We need options.
Yeah, and my understanding of the given process is that, for any given project, you can, ask for options. I think one of the challenging elements that I've maybe heard from some other communities who have done ESCOs is that if they are pushing for electrification, for the vendor to come up with you know, solutions that are more focused on electrification and therefore emissions reduction that, sometimes that was more challenging to get. And I think it just, you know, goes back to the business model, like Brad was saying, where, you know, it's, you know,
Well, this is
because in
where.
the case of electrification, maybe, you know, you're not necessarily saving energy, you know, if you're electrifying, I mean, you know.
Well, but this is one of the Alcott cases at $4 million. I think that option was electrification, full electrification. So, if you back off of the requirement for full electrification and it's instead of 100% emissions reduction, you go for 90%, the cost drops dramatically. So it's a very sensitive part of the cost curve.
Yeah,
We never see that if we don't get the data. But we need that to know where we're operating, where and how to make decisions on cost
yeah.
relative to our goal of emission, 80% emissions reduction in town.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to maybe, the DOER review of all this and put on all this is, you know, are we. If we're trying to do this through through the RFQ, with the language that we have in there, you know, are we
Okay.
are we gonna be generating confusion among respondents about what it is we're really looking for and how would that be measured and, you know, so, you know, I think, and not that we can totally anticipate that, but, you know, I think it's.
So I think your example of looking at the Alcott boiler project is a good one. And then maybe this could be written in the RFQ. That is when proposing an energy savings measure, a measure that they want to take, they should propose, they should mention a zero emissions option, what more or less that looks like. A lowest cost option.
Yeah.
And an option that is, somewhere in the middle, it might be close to lowest cost.
Yeah.
See
Exactly.
if they can find an optimum, and they know how to do this. It's not like they're dumb. These people know how to do energy.
Absolutely.
They know how to think about this. So maybe maybe those three options are the same. If those are the same option, they only have to show you one option, the zero emission, but
Yeah.
if it's a case like that, to show up to three options. Might be.
Yeah, so I can't specifically, speak to that in terms of including something like that in the RFQ, whether that's reasonable or not. I think there's others that could answer that better than I could, but, I do know in RFQs I've seen, one of the things that is asked for is, for the respondents to, provide evidence of, say, examples of some projects where they've achieved, significant energy savings for other communities, as examples. And so I don't know if it's I also don't know if it's reasonable to ask for, examples of energy savings that have also had, impactful emissions reductions, it's something like that, where they can demonstrate, oh yeah, we did energy savings, but we also managed to make emission reductions, and maybe that's something that we would ask them to try to demonstrate.
Well, I would suggest that sort of request be turned around and ask them, can you show us examples of where you've reduced emissions? This is all about emissions for us.
Yeah. Well, it's
In
not
a
all-
certain sense, the energy reduction is almost immaterial. Because if we wanna hit our goals, we've got to be emissions focused. It won't happen otherwise.
It's not just the town's goals, it's the state's goals.
Yeah,
Right, but you see, that can get obscured
yeah,
by sort of asking the wrong thing. You get what you ask for if you're lucky. If we don't ask for it, we're not gonna get it.
Mhm.
I see that Cynthia Rainey has a,
Yeah, hurry on, throw it back.
Hi, good evening. I just have a question about this. And what I unfortunately was not at the meeting last night, but what are the next steps? What's the timeline? And yeah, those are my two questions.
Yeah, so, our hope at this point is, with the meeting last night was to make sure that the key stakeholders were sort of all hearing the same thing and are on board with us continuing to move forward with this and, get the RFQ out as soon as we can, recognizing that has been a lengthy process and we want to make some progress. As we mentioned a little bit ago, the first step in that is having the Department of Energy Resources, who's responsible for this whole contracting process. They need to review our RFQ first before it goes out on the street. And so that's sort of the immediate next step would be to get them an RFQ that they can provide us feedback on. And then after that, the hope would be to begin that procurement process of posting the RFQ, getting responses, evaluating those, and selecting a vendor as soon as we can through the procurement process.
Right, so it sounds like there's a few more steps in the process to get the RFQ to the DOER. And it sounded like you were waiting for school administration on some things?
Yeah, we just need to confirm some things with them to make sure that they're comfortable with the RFQ and the language that's in there.
Okay.
I wouldn't say they're holding us up, since, if you don't mind, Megan Smudo, I wouldn't say school administration's holding us up. That, we've been partnering with them and talking to Laurie and Bob. But as we're learning more about this and had a good information session last night, I think a few other questions came up with our council. And so I'm planning on reaching out to schedule a meeting to go through some of the additional logistics with them. And I also, one thing I wanted to mention this evening is about next steps is identifying a team that is going to assist with the review of the request for qualifications. And we had some of our stakeholders last night. And I think it'd be helpful to start thinking about who from the Climate Action Committee, who from the school committee, finance committee, who would be interested and available to help do a thorough review of these qualifications when they come in, so that we're really engaging the stakeholders throughout the review process. So we're hoping to do that, start to identify those folks so that when we get it out there, and they're due, we can be efficient with the review.
That's fantastic, Megan. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, because I think it's important that there be a public conversation that the schools are involved in, so that
Certainly
it's going to make a better process. I do think it's critical to get the regional high school. I know it's a little tricky because it's a regional high school, but I think it's just so important to not miss that opportunity for having it included, even though everybody says it's new. Well, it's newish. And, things change so rapidly in this area. So I think it would be really valuable to include that as one of our biggest municipal buildings for Concord. So that's just my 2 cents. And, I hope that, I think it's given the fact that you're going to be reviewing the climate action plan and doing this important work as well as a lot of others, I do think it might be really valuable to have a school committee liaison on the Climate Action Committee. We sort of had one before, maybe 5 years ago with Wally, and that sort of, I think because of COVID mostly, might have fallen by the wayside. So given all this work, I think, and the schools are a big part of the Climate Action Plan, I would strongly encourage this committee to think about that. And it doesn't need to be in your charge, but having a liaison to just improve the conversations going back and forth, I think would be really valuable. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just quickly mention that, a number of months ago, we had sort of an initial internal stakeholders meeting where our facilities manager and I sort of, pitched this general idea. And the superintendent and assistant superintendent Bob were both at that meeting. And, based on that conversation, had indicated then that they were interested in being involved in this and had continued to indicate that. And even though they weren't able to attend last night because there was a school committee meeting, you know, they've continued to express that interest, so they're certainly on board with trying to be involved in this and move it forward.
Okay. Paul, give your hand up.
Yeah, most of the conversation so far has been about emission control. The previous climate action plan also has a small section on adaptation. We're also going to assume there's going to be a section on adaptation as well in this plan.
In the ESCO.
No, in the new plan we're talking about, the climate action plan, updating it.
Oh, yes.
Will there be a section, will there be more sections on adaptation?
There can be, but I mean, in both natural resources and preparedness well, maybe the preparedness, section is, more an adaptation, but I think if you want it, it can be there. We should now, because I think you're the person who can most easily lead that, decision. If there's stuff that should be in the climate action plan related to adaptation, in different areas, you should lead that discussion, I think.
Okay, so who do I talk to about that? Like, do I wait until the RFP comes out? The RFQ?
Well, why don't you look at the RFP when we put it together, make sure it,
Okay.
Because if it's not in there, it's not in there.
Okay, so I'll look at it when it comes out.
I think that's important.
Okay,
I think
Thank
to
you.
that point, though, I think it's important that we start identifying the leaders. I think that's great and
Yeah.
a great match. Because of the turnover, it makes sense to just, maybe we think about it in the next month and then we
Right.
sort of assign next month because, for example, Shelley's not officially a member yet and
Right.
Ruth and, you know, is that kind of what we're thinking?
I think
Yeah,
so.
so next month but we should leave that meeting with assigned liaisons or leaders or whatever we're calling it.
Okay, we're running short of time if we're ending at 9. And we didn't get through all of our topics, unfortunately.
Are there any quick updates? I'm looking at like the composting and, I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to kind of get some of those updates if they're quick.
Let's do some quick updates on A, B, and D. Let's start with the composting. Because Shelley and I had a meeting with some students today. One was on the call, Ileana. And she invited us because they are interested in making our community, you know, better. Potentially having curbside composting as a service. Now, and then, but Megan wasn't at the call and she's also been thinking about composting and somehow these things have to come together, so we need a meeting of the minds. Ileana, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what your group has been
Yeah, thank you. So hi, I'm Ileana. I'm the leader of the CCHS Sunrise Club. And basically what our group was kind of hoping to do for a project was like propose a warrant article for doing like a tax repair system with Black Earth composting. But we've just been like, right now we're just trying to figure out like what's the current situation, like collecting information from like anyone we can. So yeah, any tips would help, like any advice anyone has to give.
Yeah. So one of the questions we came up, well, we know we were thinking that we will be running a survey. Haven't had a chance to meet to get the questions together. It sounded from what somebody said at the meeting that the Concord Public Works is gonna be having a survey relating to a new a new web interface and services. Are we aware of that? Were you aware of that, Megan?
I'm not aware of the details of a survey that they're doing regarding solid waste. No, I don't know the details of that.
Okay, so we should check into it, but if we can piggyback on that survey, it might be worthwhile doing. If it's going out to the whole community.
Yeah, I think it might be. You know, and I'm sorry to miss the meeting this afternoon. I had a conflict. But I am definitely interested in talking more, and we have been corresponding, via email, and I'm, selfishly a little bit trying to pivot the project to serve some of our needs, but can accept it if it doesn't go that way. But just kind of sharing some of the things we're looking at, which is how is our pilot program from 2022 working now? We've been talking about it, at this committee. There are, some logistical challenges, cost increase. There's some contamination issues that are continuing. And so thinking about how to kind of tighten up and clean up our system and educate people about this public option for composting, because I think maybe it's fallen off the grid. If people have moved to town, maybe they don't know about it. So I'm interested in, this summer, and I don't know if there's a climate action committee member that is interested in this too and wants to work with me. But if it's Brad, then that's great too. To work on, coming up with a survey, kind of figuring out who's using it and analyzing the tool that we have before we start to think about, additional public composting, because I think that sometimes starting things can be the hardest part. And so there's already a program that exists here that some people are using. And so how can we kind of get a handle on how it's going and if there are tweaks that we could do to improve it?
Right. Well, I do think we have interest on the committee. One new member knows a lot about it.
Yeah, and I also have interest, and I would say that I think the data collection is super important. I'm thinking about just myself. I used to use the pilot regularly until I decided to just hire Black Earth, so I no longer drive my compost to the high school or to the Harvey Wheeler area and dump it. I actually get curbside now. So, if there's a drop off in usage, it's not necessarily because people aren't using it, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I just think, really understanding what the data is important. And looking to other towns. I moved from Arlington, which had a town-wide, gave us free compost bins, partnered with Black Earth. So other municipalities around are already doing that work, and I think we can look to them as a model too.
In educating folks about what's allowed, because Eric has been handling the contamination, which I don't know if this group knows how dedicated he has been to this, and it's really been a significant effort of him going out with trash bags and going through the compost. And so I'd like to, figure out how to have people register again and have them watch the material or look through the materials about how we're able to, what's able to be composted, to try to minimize how often we go out to, take a plastic bag of dog poop out of the compost, because that is happening.
Do we need to have a plan for who's going to do that dirty work in 8 days?
It's gonna be me. It's gonna be me, Brad. So I think we're gonna find a way to lock it down a little bit. We're looking to get some locks and this is it's a real issue. So it's on my mind.
Can there be some effort to get businesses, restaurants on board? I heard today the Colonial Inn does not compost and throws a ton of food out. Is there any way of trying to quantify how much waste they actually put in? How much methane that would generate? Any Anything to try and persuade them that composting would be a good idea?
Well, there is the state regulation that if they're generating more than half a ton a week, they're supposed to be separating it. And the problem with that is there's really no enforcement, you know, there's nobody who's walking around and checking on that everywhere. So there's a lot of businesses that may not be, you know, separating it as they're supposed to be by regulation, but, you know, and yeah, I've been contacted over the years, by a few different, you know, businesses in town asking, you know, if there'll ever be an opportunity for, you know, composting for them as well, but, you know, right, to be honest, the cost would just be prohibitive for the town to try to offer something for, you know, commercial interests to be able to do that, especially when now many of them are supposed to be doing it anyway. On their own, so.
Half a ton a week, is that what you said? Okay.
Well, I think that, yes, there's two questions here, but I know we're limited on time, so we should certainly figure out a subcommittee or whatever to move forward with this, because it's important.
Right.
There's a lot to it.
It's a good educational thing for people to find to you.
Well, we should try to get a meeting together at least before the students disappear for the summer. Perhaps, in the next, well, maybe it's right after town meeting. Just to clarify our goals, figure out what we can do. And report back here next month.
Yeah, that sounds great because we're probably not going to be able to do much over the summer, of course. So it would be really great to like have a plan or some direction before then.
Yeah, okay. Laura, you have a comment?
Yes, thanks so much. I feel badly. I had no idea there was a problem with the compost and it was so much extra work. Has there been any thought to getting curbside to combine it with our, you know, how we have the rollout of the new solid waste, the trash and recycling, and our trash bins are so much smaller. So like, it seemed to me it would be a great time to get like people to be able to sign up for a curbside Black Earth like other towns offer, since the pilot's been maybe too successful since we're dropping off too much stuff there.
I think that's what the students are thinking,
Oh, good.
and that would be a goal. I don't know whether if CPW, if the town decided this is something we wanted to do, made sense based on the survey, et cetera, lots of interest, whether it actually would require any town meeting discussion or whether they could just go do it.
Could we, yeah, okay. Maybe find out how the other towns have put on the curbside.
Yeah.
I don't know, talking to Black Earth or talking to another town.
Yeah.
Good idea. Okay,
I
Thank
could
you.
add one more thing which might be of interest. Concord Can is planning for the September meeting to focus on compost.
okay,
I mean, things may change, but that's the current plan.
okay, well, we can do something to inform that. So,
Brad, can I just add one quick? So I'll just say tech is very aware of the plan to you know, to update the intention to update the climate action plan.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of overlap with mobility concerns, so you know, Rebecca Woodward is very strong in highlighting the need to collaborate, so we will definitely be looking at it and getting back, you know, to you guys with some inputs, but it may take a little time, but I know this is a process.
okay, thank you. I just wanted to make a quick update on the,
Megan's hands up, but just before we move on.
oh, maybe,
I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure I didn't leave the question about like the public works component unresolved. I just wanted to clarify though that you know, the town's position at this time is that the Concord Public Works is really operating at full capacity. the recent overhaul of the solid waste and recycling program was a significant undertaking. And we're developing a new building and collection system, which is going to require, a lot of public outreach and effort over the next several months. And so with our existing goals and priorities that we have, at this time, taking on a new service model is really not feasible for the community. And so it's not saying it wouldn't be down the line, but I didn't want people to, leave this meeting thinking that's something we could take on at least in the next year as our budgets are set and our kind of our priorities are baked in for the next year. So.
Okay. Very good. We're over time. I wanted to just update on the network geothermal conversations, just for a minute. We had a meeting, together with, Catherine was at the meeting, and, the, couple of other citizens and, a guy named Jeremy Koo from MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and they are, at our request, putting in, a request for funding let me, get the notes, just 1 second. They're putting in a request for funding on through the DOER Regional Planning Assistance Grant, based on, investigating business model approaches, for either running a network through the light plant or combining it with, the gas utility. And also to look at barriers and opportunities for NLP deployment of network geothermal, and basically trying to understand what other communities that have municipal light plants are interested in doing. What policy, legislative policy recommendations they have. So that's a step forward. It'll take place over, I think it's a 1.5 year grant phase. So I'm excited about that. We're gonna have another meeting of that group next week, probably on Tuesday morning.
I want to say, I think that is great. I have been very concerned about the trajectory of network geothermal and having it be on a timeline where our only option is a legacy methane company and not have some competition in the system. So I think this conversation allows us to accelerate implementation of network geothermal simply by demonstrating to these methane companies that if they don't get on it, maybe CMLP will.
Maybe.
I hope.
Right.
So I think this is wonderful, and anything that we can be doing as a committee to encourage this conversation to move along maybe faster than 1.5 years would be phenomenal. This is great news.
And just out of curiosity, I know that folks from CMLP are in that email chain.
Yeah.
How invested or how much do they know about, I mean, I know they're informed since they see it, but have they been coming to the meetings or are they supportive?
They have been coming to
Okay.
most of the meetings.
Yeah.
They didn't come to the last meeting.
Okay.
Now Jeremy said it would be useful to have a letter. I didn't actually read the whole email, but I asked him today, from either the town or the municipal light plant in support of the proposal. So I don't know if that's something would need to ask the light plant director or Megan whether getting a letter of support for this proposal is due on the 30th of May, could be in the cards.
I wonder if we could ask Megan right now, that's a short timeline.
I think for me, I just would need to speak with the light plant director first and connect with him. And I'm kind of getting up to speed on this effort, and so I just would connect with him
Okay,
before I commit. But I did see that come in today, I think, or yesterday, and it's definitely on my list.
okay, great.
Short-term list, since it has a quick deadline. So yes, we'll get on that.
Okay, thank you. Great. So that was my main update there. But we're over time. Are there any other comments from the committee or attendees? I appreciate everybody hanging in there.
Yeah, I get up at 4:45. My limit here.
So why don't we adjourn?